She has direct control over President Trump's social media accounts, has a dedicated desk in the Oval Office, and even has a permanent seat on Marine One, the presidential helicopter. When foreign leaders couldn't reach Trump through official channels, they would text her directly. She earns an annual salary of $150,000 and her title is Special Assistant to the President. Sounds ordinary, right? But on July 8th in Ankara, U.S. intelligence found Iranians had smuggled in air defense systems to target Trump. To counter the assassination risk, the White House executed a Golden Cicada maneuver. Trump first walked into the old Air Force One in front of cameras from all over the world, but a few minutes later, he quietly got off from the other side of the plane, slipped into an airport catering truck, was secretly transported to a military aircraft nearby, and finally flew away without a sound. Left behind on that decoy plane were Secretary of State Rubio, Treasury Secretary Bessent, a large group of White House staff, and the entire press corps. Only a handful of people flew away with Trump, and she was one of them. Her name is Natalie Jarp, and she's 35 years old. In today's episode, we're going to talk about this woman who is the most trusted and closest to Trump. It's a story about her and Trump that has been discussed overwhelmingly by the outside world recently, yet almost no one has told it in its entirety. In October 2023, at Trump Tower in Manhattan, New York, Trump hadn't returned to the White House yet, and he was on his way to fight a civil fraud case. The motorcade was already idling downstairs, ready to head to the courthouse. When the staff were counting the seats, they realized there was no room left for Natalie Jarp. At that time, Jarp didn't have an official title on the campaign team, but she was someone in Trump's inner circle. Logically speaking, if there's no seat, you just can't go. But Jarp wasn't having it. Recently, CNN cited two people familiar with the matter at the time, saying that a shouting match broke out in the lobby. Jarp insisted, "President Trump wants me to go," but even after all that arguing, there still wasn't a seat for her. So what did she do? Jarp did something almost unimaginable. She opened the trunk of an SUV in the motorcade, jumped in, and curled up in the trunk all the way to the courthouse. Many left-leaning media outlets mocked this as pathological. But in the workplace, isn't that just delivering for your boss? At all costs, mission accomplished. As everyone knows, Trump hates reading off screens. He loves reading paper materials. So wherever Jarp went, she carried a portable printer and spare batteries. The New York Times reported that she would print out favorable online reports about Trump, social media posts from supporters, and various positive comments, clip them into a stack with gold paper clips, and hand them to the president at any moment. During the time Trump was fighting his criminal case in New York in 2024, every day when he walked out of the courtroom to speak to the cameras, he was always clutching a stack of papers in his hand. These were the ones that came out of Jarp's printer. So she had a nickname, the Human Printer. She knew it too. So in a letter, she wrote, "Hey, I don't have to be the human printer anymore." Now, friends, keep this letter in mind. We'll talk about it later, as the content is quite explosive. Jarp also had posting rights to Trump's Truth Social account. This, within the White House, was a sensitive matter. In the past, this work was all handled by senior advisors, but later on it turned into Trump dictating, or Jarp printing out drafted posts for Trump to review. Once Trump gave the nod, Jarp would then post them from her own phone. Jarp even learned Trump's unique writing style, with his random capitalization and erratic punctuation. The Wall Street Journal reported that Jarp typically wouldn't show drafts of social media posts to the White House Chief of Staff, the communications team, or national security officials. And there were a few times when that caused trouble. That video depicting the Obamas as apes was posted at Trump's direction, and it ended up having to be deleted later. Another AI-generated image portraying Trump as Christ was also deleted. This led to complaints within the White House, but Jarp said she only works for Trump himself. This privilege of being accountable to only one person reached its peak during the shadow of the Ankara assassination attempt this July, which is also the incident that ignited public opinion and has the whole country hotly debating right now. On July 8th, as the NATO summit concluded in Ankara, U.S. and Turkish intelligence agencies intercepted intelligence within 24 hours, indicating that an Iranian team had infiltrated Turkey with man-portable air defense systems, and they also had access to Trump's itinerary in Ankara. Do you friends remember that Trump said something at the press conference back then? He said, "I am Iran's #1 target." At that time, the National Security Council and the Secret Service immediately made the decision to switch clients. And that's how that Golden Cicada shedding its shell maneuver came about. We talked about that in our short video. So, a reminder to friends, if you haven't subscribed to TrueViews yet, please do so. We often share interesting short news stories with friends in our short videos. Subscribe to TrueViews so you won't miss any exciting episodes. At that time, Trump boarded the old Air Force One in front of the cameras. A few minutes later, an airport catering truck pulled up to the side of the plane. Trump quietly got off the plane, then the catering truck drove away, heading all the way to a C-32A military aircraft that was parked in a concealed spot nearby. According to CBS, besides Trump, there were 3 White House aides in that catering truck: Natalie Jarp, Walt Nauta, and Dan Scavino. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth subsequently boarded the secret aircraft to accompany and escort him. Left behind on Air Force One were Secretary of State Rubio, Treasury Secretary Bessent, a large group of senior White House officials, and the entire press corps. Rubio and Bessent were aware of this, but the reporters and some White House staff were not. They were simply instructed at the time to pull down the window shades on the plane. Later, a reporter asked Trump why they were required to pull down the shades at that time. Trump responded pointedly, saying that it might have been a dangerous flight. But if I'm finished, you're finished too, right? After the Washington Post recently broke this story, many people have been asking, how was the list of people who could accompany Trump on that secret flight during such a critical moment determined? As Republican Senator John Barrasso said, HAARP is an extra set of eyes and ears for President Trump. The New York Times says HAARP never rests, not even on Sundays. He exchanges text messages with foreign leaders on behalf of the president, and he stays up late with the president to draft social media posts. When foreign leaders can't reach Trump through official channels, they text HAARP. When Trump sees someone on TV and doesn't want to reach out personally, he will use HAARP to make contact and pass on messages. A Rolling Stone reporter recalled that a source once told him they had a direct line to Trump, and that the way to get it was by first catching HAARP's attention. Just think, when a 35-year-old unknown woman holds the fastest path to power, the harsh criticism is bound to follow. The most brutal blow, however, came on August 20th. The Daily Beast published 2 private letters allegedly written by HAARP to Trump. The source of these letters was Trump's biographer, Michael Wolff. Wolff stated that these 2 letters were written during or after Trump's golf trip to Scotland and Ireland in May 2023, and were discovered and photographed by someone within Trump's campaign team from a stack of printed materials he had submitted. I'll read a few excerpts from the content of these letters. She was apologizing for her performance in Scotland. He wrote, "I'm very sorry. I thought I was the only one left behind last night." He said that after being left alone in a van outside customs without his passport, he panicked and called the president directly, adding that he should have called the Secret Service instead. He also apologized for walking along on the golf course instead of riding in a golf cart. Photos from that trip did indeed capture him following close behind Trump at the Turnberry golf course. Then he wrote, "I hope things will always be good between us. I've been on edge all week, forgetting to eat and even forgetting to sleep, getting only 2 or 3 hours of rest at a time." He mentioned his father, writing, "I've been thinking about the past, about the pain of losing my dad," and added, "Thank you for always being by my side. I will never forget the promise you made to me after I lost my father. I know how happy he would be now because I finally went to Scotland and Ireland, places he always wanted me to visit." And there's this most quoted line, "Thank you for being the guardian and protector of my life." Now, friends, you might have some questions when you first hear this content, but please hold on to those questions and keep listening. Wait just a little bit and we will clear everything up later on. The second letter had a more relaxed tone. He said this trip finally let him disconnect, so he wasn't a human printer on the golf course. He even had time for walks and to watch the sunrise and sunset. As soon as these 2 letters came out, the left-leaning media quickly caught the scent of a juicy story. But there is one detail the left-leaning media didn't mention. The source of these letters is Michael Wolff, a man whose track record isn't exactly clean. He has previously been accused multiple times of fabricating quotes in his books. CNN also admitted that it could not independently verify that these letters were written by HAARP. Furthermore, even if these letters were authentic, reading through them, there's nothing that crosses the line. They are mostly expressing gratitude, guilt over feeling like they hadn't done enough, and a genuinely close emotional bond with Trump. But what is this bond? Why would Hope develop such feelings for Trump? It has to do with her experiences, which we will discuss later. Stay tuned, friends. Georgia Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff seized on this and really ran with it, claiming that Trump didn't want to do any work and just wanted to fly around everywhere with Natalie. The White House's reaction was extremely intense. The press secretary and the communications director took turns responding, and Trump's son, Eric Trump, even blasted it, calling it absolute garbage. Natalie is a cancer survivor and the hardest working person in the entire White House. Fox News commentators questioned whether a woman can't simply work for a male leader without being smeared with dirty accusations. So, what is the truth? Who is this woman? Where did she come from? And why did she end up by Trump's side? Natalie Harp was born into a very typical evangelical Christian family. Her father is Robert Harp. According to a report by the Daily Beast, her father worked as a real estate agent and studied at Dallas Theological Seminary in Texas in his earlier years. Her mother, Jill, studied Christian education and the Bible at Wheaton College. Wheaton College is one of the most famous evangelical liberal arts colleges in the United States. As for Harp herself, she attended 2 schools, both of which were church-affiliated. Her undergraduate degree was from Point Loma Nazarene University in San Diego. Later, she earned her MBA from Liberty University, which is a major hub for conservative Christian higher education in the United States. Therefore, this family background is the key to understanding almost every choice in Harp's life. He didn't grow up in political circles. He grew up in church culture. Faith, gratitude, reciprocity, and loyalty, these words aren't just rhetoric in his vocabulary, they are his actual worldview. However, in 2015, fate dealt him 2 fatal blows. What were the 2 heavy blows that fate dealt Harp in 2015? One day, while he was receiving an IV drip in the hospital, a nurse made an absolutely forbidden mistake. She injected sterile water for injection into his vein, mistaking it for saline. Let me explain what that means medically. Sterile water for injection cannot be directly injected intravenously. It lacks osmotic pressure, and entering the bloodstream causes red blood cells to rupture, which is hemolysis. In severe cases, it can lead to organ damage. This is a contraindication that is repeatedly warned about in textbooks. But this is exactly what happened to Harp. From that day on, his life fell apart. This directly led to massive hemolysis and organ damage, and the excruciating pain stripped him of his ability to move. However, the tragedy didn't end there. He was then diagnosed with stage 2 bone cancer. He began a difficult struggle for survival, but the only 2 conventional chemotherapy options available on the market both failed in his case. He wanted to join clinical trials to try new drugs, but he was rejected because the type of bone cancer he had was extremely rare, and he was one of the very few youngest patients. For the sake of standardized and safe trial data, pharmaceutical companies and hospitals simply shut him out because of his young age. So, with all conventional treatments failing and no access to new drug trials, how did the medical system at the time treat him? The plan they offered him was to teach him how to face death. Doctors prescribed him strong opioid painkillers, barbiturates, and medical marijuana to numb the excruciating pain, had him sign a do not resuscitate order, helped him apply for disability status, and even recommended so-called death with dignity, or suggested he voluntarily stop eating and drinking to end his life through dehydration and starvation. Hub later recalled those days, saying, "They didn't study my symptoms or diagnose and treat me at all. They were just teaching me how to die with dignity." Fortunately, a turning point appeared. In May 2018, Trump signed the famous Right to Try Act at the White House. This law stipulates that terminally ill patients who have exhausted all other options have the right to bypass the FDA's cumbersome approval process to try experimental drugs. It was precisely because of this act that Hub was able to find an oncologist willing to prescribe him an immunotherapy drug, which pulled him back from the brink of death. Although many opposing media outlets and medical experts later nitpicked the technical details, arguing that according to strict classification, the drug Hub used at the time was actually one that had been approved but not licensed for bone cancer, which medically speaking didn't strictly fall under the jurisdiction of the act Trump signed at the time. But as we know, the law isn't just about the text itself. After the Right to Try Act was passed, the overall atmosphere in the U.S. medical community changed. Before, doctors were afraid of disputes and penalties, so they wouldn't dare step out of line. But once this act came out, it turned the decision of whether terminally ill patients should take risks into a national process. A doctor who originally wouldn't dare prescribe the medication, after such a change, well, they felt they could give it a try. So in Hub's mind, when the entire medical system was only teaching him how to die with dignity, it was Trump who gave him a light, supporting his right to fight for life, and providing him with substantive policy support. Because of Trump, Hub found a way to survive. Just think, for a young man on the verge of despair, this kind of hope, Trump was like a second father to him. And sure enough, he got better. In June 2019, he wrote his story in an article and posted it on LinkedIn. The article went viral, and 2 days later, his friends at Fox invited him onto their show. He was subsequently invited to speak at the Faith and Freedom Coalition stage, where Trump called him up in front of everyone, saying he lit up the whole screen. On stage, Hub used an incredibly powerful metaphor. He said, "We all know the story of the Good Samaritan in the Bible. I was the one lying on the side of the road, forgotten by everyone, a victim of medical malpractice, left there to die. First, the medical system walked by. They prescribed me opioids and then just walked away. Next came the political system. They saw me there, stopped just long enough to tell me how to die, how to hasten my death, so that I could die with dignity. Then came an outsider, my Good Samaritan, President Donald J. Trump. He saw me and he didn't walk past. He stopped. At the August 2020 Republican National Convention, Hub was scheduled to speak on the first night. But what the vast majority of people didn't know was that just 1 month before he took the stage, his father had committed suicide at home due to immense pressure. On stage, he compared Trump to George Bailey from the movie It's a Wonderful Life, the protagonist who spent his whole life sacrificing himself for everyone in a small town. For the next 2 years, Hub worked as an anchor at One America News, hosting a show called The Real Story. It wasn't until 2022, the darkest low point of Trump's life, that he not only failed to return to the White House after the 2020 election, but was also burdened with lawsuits and investigations from all sides. The elites in Washington, Wall Street, and the legal profession all distanced themselves from him, and even his closest aides were leaving him one by one. Just when everyone was jumping ship, Hub made a decision that caught everyone by surprise. He resigned from his respectable job as a television host and resolutely rushed to Trump's side, becoming an unofficial assistant with no title, no staff position, and not even a parking space. During that most difficult period, there was another person who resigned from a 7-figure salary position as a partner at a prestigious law firm to help Trump fight one lawsuit after another. That person is the newly appointed Trump Attorney General Todd Blanche. His relationship with Trump is also quite dramatic and moving. We actually did a dedicated episode to tell that story. For those who missed it, after watching today's episode, you're welcome to check it out. I've pinned the link to that episode in the comment section. For the next 2 years, Hub became the person carrying the printer for Trump. At Trump's campaign rallies, in courthouse hallways, on the sidelines of ball games, and on airplanes, he was there for every single lawsuit. On the first day at Trump's criminal trial in New York, Hub handed him a note with a Bible verse copied onto it, which read, "I will always be by your side." Just imagine, if you were Trump, how touched you would be. He's practically an angel sent by God. In November 2024, Trump won, and 2 months later, Hub officially became the presidential administrative assistant, with a desk right outside the Oval Office. Trump calls Hub sweetie or daughter, which are common terms of endearment used by elders for younger people in the United States. When someone reported to Trump that the security team was unhappy with Hub, Trump simply replied that she just loves her president, that's all. Trump also once told his staff, "All of you will leave one day to make big money, but she will never leave me." In the brutal world of politics, such a bond is extremely rare, yet exceptionally precious. An 80-year-old man stands at the highest position in the world, having been indicted 4 times, grazed by a bullet on his ear, and placed at the top of Iran's hit list. He has seen too many people who swarmed around him when he was in power, only to avoid him when he lost. When he met such a young man at his lowest point, someone who resolutely quit his job, held no title, yet was still willing to follow him and carry his printer, Trump's assessment was that Hopper was the only person who loved him like his own wife and children. And for Hopper, who grew up with Christian faith, this might just be his worldview of gratitude and reciprocity. From an anonymous assistant rummaging through trunks to a White House comrade-in-arms who sat in a motorcade with the president to escape, he now holds the highest social power. Some say this is unbearable vulgarity, while others say it is the purest form of gratitude and loyalty. Friends, what do you think? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section. As for the story of Hopper and Trump, if you have anything you'd like to say, let's continue the discussion in the comments. You will find that around Trump, we see all kinds of people. Some wear masks and stab him in the back at critical moments, while others remain obscure but stay by his side through thick and thin. However, it is only this pure kindness and ultimate loyalty that are truly moving. Alright, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, friends, and I wish you all a wonderful weekend. Before you go, don't forget to hit the like button. New friends, welcome to subscribe to True Perspective. Don't forget about that fan hype feature. Please, friends, take just 1 second to help me click that hype button and share my show with even more people. Because such a small interaction from you can help my carefully crafted videos spread further and wider, allowing my hard work to be seen by more people. And with that, Zhenfei thanks you all. Alright, that's all for today. Don't forget, we'll see you next Tuesday at the same time right here on Zhen Guandian. Bye bye.